All right. Hey, everyone. I'm back. Let's get this thing started right away. If you're new to the stream, welcome. My name is Mark, and here's what we do here. So, in this stream, I do analysis, right? Not like the other stream where I do look for trades in the micro NASDAQ. Here, we look at charts and we're just looking for scenarios, levels, and things like that so that we're prepared for the coming week as far as swing trades and day trades are concerned. All right, so with that, here's how the stream works. First, I run through the economic calendar very quickly. Then we go into the charts. And then after that, if there are any trade ideas that are in play, we can take a look at them using the Trade Scanner Pro and talk about how there's still what potential is still left in them if there's anything. Because I've been showing in my early streams, I've been going over this filtering technique where you actually use the signal from the Trade Scanner Pro, you use it as a heads up. And then you look for an entry after that. You don't take the signal itself. In this environment, I find it to be very effective because we have a lower momentum environment. In a high momentum environment, you don't have to deal with that. But in a low momentum environment, a lot of times the signal appears and then it's a fake out half the time. So to filter that out, if you use the signal instead as a heads up, and then you look for a signal after that, it seems to work out well. It's saved me a number of bad trades. Also, it's very effective for the larger time frames, like if you use a 5 minute, 15 minute, 30 minute, and so on. Hey, Hussein, good to see you. Hey, how are you? All right, no problem. It was a good session early today. Hey, Grego. Yeah, I got cool. Thanks. Hey, James. In my stream earlier today, I got kicked off the stream because there was a power outage. So, and then by the time I logged back in, the stream stopped, so I can't continue it. So that's what happened. But yeah, so you could check that out. We had a nice trade, and it took it early on. See, if you notice something, if you go back and you watch my my streams where I lose money compared to my streams where I make money, you'll start to notice something. What you'll notice is the ones where I lose money, it's usually because of a conflicting environment. Like it's pretty clear from the beginning. The bigger picture will be bearish and the smaller picture will be bullish, or vice versa. When you see that, and a lot of times I'll say it's usually best to walk away. But of course, for the stream, I don't walk away. I have to try to take a trade and I lose money. Today was crystal clear. As soon as I turned on the chart, bullish. We had our levels, but it was bullish. So all we had to do was wait for a long signal to appear. I waited. It appeared pretty quickly. I waited for a little bit of a pullback after the signal, as you guys will see. And then I took a trade, and the trade worked out really nice. So, but again, the momentum was very clear. It was bullish. There was no question. There was no conflict. So I'm going to pay more attention to that during my streams. And if we have a stream, like for example, if I see conflict, then I will be either extremely more selective or just won't take a trade. Maybe that's the way to do it. So anyway, um, yeah, insanely bullish, right? I mean, it was just like clean. It was just clean cut. Hey, James, no problem. It was just like crystal clear. There was no argument. It was bullish, no conflict. So I think it's worth paying attention to. All right, so enough of that. But the trade worked out well. Now here we're going to talk about the Bitcoin analysis, and we're going to talk about the levels. We're going to talk about other markets and stuff like that. Now, before we do, let's talk about the economic calendar very quickly. Today's a pretty significant week. So we have a number of interest rate announcements this week, not just the FOMC. So I believe tonight it's the Bank of Japan, and that's usually around midnight. They have their interest rate announcement. So this is mostly important for Forex pairs. It's not really important for the US dollar. But for Forex pairs, if you're involved, and if there are any surprises, it could move the stock market somewhat, maybe the next day, possibly, but not really. Everything is pretty dollar sensitive these days, right? And plus, we have all that geopolitical stuff going on. So tweets are going to be real sensitive, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, So we have the Bank of Japan tonight. Tomorrow we have retail sales. I believe that's an 8:30 a.m. number, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, retail sales. So that can cause a movement or set the tone for the day. So you want to be aware of that. On Wednesday, we have, I believe it's, oh, that's the FOMC. 2 p.m. Eastern time is when it comes out. And at 2:30 is the press conference. So price action going into that can become very random and erratic. So you want to be aware of that. And if you're in positions going into the FOMC, understand that if there are any surprises during the press conference, the market can move in a wild way. Now, this conference, this FOMC, he was expected to cut 25 basis points, but that went out the window. So now they're going to be looking for guidance. What's he going to do? What's he gonna say about is he gonna give any hints about the next meeting? What's the story there? So that's gonna be very close watch. You want to be aware of that. On Thursday, we have I believe it's the Swiss National Bank, Bank of Switzerland or whatever. They have their interest rate announcement. I believe it's Thursday. And then on Friday, it's British pound, their rate announcement. I may have those two mixed up, but that's I know the Swiss National Bank and the Bank of England have their rate announcements this week as well. So just want to be aware of that. Also, Thursday is a market holiday. All right. I wasn't really too informed on this holiday, and then I looked it up. Hey, man, it's great if you have a job and then they give you a day off for something like that. But really, I'm not going to get into any politics here, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so let's get into the charts now, shall we? So Thursday, obviously, the markets are closed, or they're going to be a half day or something like that. The market will be affected. Usually on a day like that, you don't want to even waste your time with the market. Don't even waste your time. If you're trying to day trade, it's usually a day you want to avoid. Typically, holidays are the worst because there's no volume. Like if the stock market's closed, the futures are going to stink. That's just the way it is because there's no volume and you may get like a slow grind. And the problem with it is if you make a mistake and you lose money, you're just not going to make it back. It's just not worth it. So, and then half these people are going to take Friday off anyway. And I'm probably not going to I'm not going to stream on Friday most likely. I'll remind you guys again on Wednesday, but most likely on Friday I will not stream either because I'm going to take the day off too. Anyway, all right. So that's the story with that. Let me know if you have any questions. Now let's talk about Bitcoin. In my analysis that I published on TradingView yesterday, this is the chart that I shared. And as you can see, the illustration was this, right? Now the title of that article was Consolidation Easy, Just Walk Away, right? Because at the time, this is what we were doing. We were in here, right? This little triangle situation, this little mini one right here. And the market can go either way. So usually it's like, okay, let the market make a decision. It's made a decision. Look at this. It broke this inside bar. So if you're looking at intraday trades, I mean, there's probably more structure to work with there, right? Like a 4-hour time frame, for example. You had the higher low and you had the breakout, but you had a clear consolidation. There could have been something there, possibly. And if you're using the Trade Scanner Pro, turn it on over here. I mean, look, there was a signal that was present on the Trade Scanner Pro on the 4-hour, right? That signal was present back here days earlier. When was this? Friday. Friday, this was called. Now, again, if you're using the filtering method like I've been talking about, you don't take the initial trade. You don't take this. Instead, you use this as a heads up. You say, okay, there is a long signal in play. What can I do with this trade, right? So this is your risk area, the area between the entry price and the stop loss defined by the Trade Scanner Pro. That's your risk gap, I like to call it. And in that area, you're looking for setups. On the 4-hour, for example, right? What you want to see is something like this, right? You have the little pin bar situation, breaks the high. Actually, it's not a pin bar. It's a doji situation, little spinning top type candle, right? You break the high of that, that's a possibility. Or if you don't want to get too overwhelmed or confused by the single candles, just wait for a re-entry or the retouch of the blue line, the entry price. If you had done that, there wasn't much pain to take. Okay, there really wasn't much pain to take. If you bought this thing at the second time it touched, right? Well, there was a couple of times you could have done it over here on this break, but let's say you missed it because you just weren't looking, and then you checked on Sunday and you're like, oh, there was a signal, right? And then you waited or something, and there was a blue line touch over here. There was another blue line touch over here. Let's just say if you took over this one, how much pain was that? 800, what is that? 604. Looks like 804 points. All right, on this time frame, that's nothing. Your risk on this time frame is way more than that. This is your risk. Your risk is 2,500 points on Bitcoin. So you're looking at a third of that, right? A third of the risk is all you really had to deal with. And if you miss that, look what occurred not much long after that. Another pin bar right there to go long. And you went through the blue line again. So there were numerous opportunities to get into this using the Trade Scanner Pro. That's one thing. Like I really like that filter, and it's especially useful when you're using larger time frames, like the 4 hour, 30-minute, hourly, whatever, for swing trades. Essentially, I like it for the small time frames because it keeps me out of a lot of bad trades. If you guys have seen now, look, I mean, this thing's almost at its profit objective. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Look at that; it's almost there. So that's a big trade if you manage to capture something like this. I mean, from the blue line, that's 3,700 points. Not bad for a couple of days, right? Not bad. So A says, I saw that signal and was honestly kind of skeptical until the super nice market structure into 105K. So yeah, see, look, and you know what, A, it's okay to be skeptical. That's why I'm saying to people, don't take the initial signal. Don't take it. Use it as a heads up. So if you're using that as the heads up, you say, okay, signal is present. Let me see if I could find a justification or some type of candlestick confirmation to get into this. And you had a couple of them. You had a few of them. And I say for people that don't even want to do that, or maybe you're not that advanced and you're like, I don't know this candlestick stuff. Okay, no problem. Re-entry of the retouch of the blue line. You had a couple of touches there, right? That's the easiest thing to do. And it all worked out without taking too much pain. And when you're facing 2,700 points of risk or whatever that is, you simply take smaller size. That's all. But yeah, so it's really nice. It's a really nice tool for that. And when you're using larger time frames anyway, you're going to find yourself in this situation a lot where a trade had gone off and you weren't paying attention to it or for whatever reason, and you see it after the fact and you're like, and what you want to see in those situations is, can price pull back into the risk gap? If price is like up here by the time, like if price is up here by the time, then forget it. Or like now, you don't touch this now. Or once price pushes into the middle here, you're done. There's nothing to do. But if you get the signal and you're fooling around inside the risk gap, there may be opportunities there. And the great thing about that technique is if this thing pulls back like it started to and just keeps going and never give you a reason to enter, you miss out on a stop. You've seen me do that numerous times during my AM streams where a signal goes off. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to take it. Let's see what it does. And it goes straight to the stop. And I was never in it. That saved me a number of times. So that's extremely helpful to save yourself $100, during that stream, $150, $200. That's money I don't have to make back now. Anyway, so the whole point. So back to Bitcoin, right? That's when you have a bigger picture situation like this, it's nice to have a tool like the Trade Scanner Pro to confirm something, especially when you have some sort of idea that you're near a possible support. I mean, look, you could have drawn this after this pin bar was developed a few days ago, right? When was this? Thursday. The Thursday pin bar. You could have drawn this trend line by Thursday or Friday, and you had some sort of reference, right? You had some sort of reference that it should have, if it was going to hold, that would be a place to hold. And it held. Now look at it. So now people are all excited. People are going crazy. You don't touch this now. As a day trader, sure, there's plenty of opportunities when you see a nice big candle like that. Plenty of movement on the day trade time frame. But the swing trade time frame or investing time frame, forget it. You can't touch this thing now because now the risk is elevated again. Because now you're going back up into the resistance areas 110, 112. Maybe it breaks out this time, possibly, because we are in a triangle. And since the general trend is bullish, as nothing's changed here, we may get maybe this consolidation was the wave four, which is typical wave four. This very likely could be the broader wave four. And now we get the fifth of the fifth wave. Maybe that's what this is, which can take this thing up to 120. It's very possible. So I wouldn't get all excited and buy this thing now expecting something like that. But if you get some sort of confirmations, some sort of continuation patterns along the way, then there could be some opportunities on the swing trade time frame. Certainly on the day trade time frame. If this thing just continues higher and starts breaking out and starts doing stuff like that, there will be plenty of opportunities on the smaller time frames, meaning 5-minute chart, 15-minute chart, stuff like that. But as swing trade goes, you want to see a continuation pattern, right? That's what you want to see. If you want to go for the breakout, that's a valid strategy because you're in a consolidation in a broader bullish trend. But the thing with the breakout is if you take it and it gives you a hard time right away, then you need to call for adjustment. Because when something breaks out, it shouldn't give you a hard time. It should just go. It should go pretty quickly. Now, when I say that, I mean like it may give you a hard time in a few minutes or whatever, like in a half hour, but over the next couple of hours, this thing should be closing strong after you get in. Not pin bar, bearish pin bar, and you bought the top of the pin bar, right? You don't want to see that. If you see that, most likely you're caught in a fake out. A asks a question here. Uh, how unlikely do you think the breakout is? Of course, we look at price action there, but I want to be prepared. Okay, so again, I that's a good question. It's really the only way we can look at this, or the only way I can look at this is we're in a generally a bullish trend. So resistances are more likely to break, but I really can't put a percentage on it. So if I'm going to have to guess, I would have to say maybe there's a greater than 50% chance that it follows through because the trend is generally bullish. So, but we can't really bank on that, right? We can't bank on that. So what you have to do is you have to be prepared. If you want to go for that breakout and go long on that breakout, you have to be prepared for the appearance of the fake out. If you get the appearance that's telling you, okay, it's not working, and that's likely to appear up in here somewhere, up in this area, like you get a pin bar, you get some kind of bearish situation, you get something that looks like this, right? It starts out pretty good, like after this breakout here. Just look at this breakout. Here's a nice example. Just let's open up, let's zoom in a bit here. And look at this example here. Okay, look at this. This was a nice breakout. And as soon as it broke out, this was the breakout candle. See this? Breakout. Okay, right there. See that? It gave you, the next candle was a pretty lousy candle at one point. It gave you a sharp red candle, like an engulfing candle. This was at one point, that was a bearish engulfing candle. That's certainly something you do not want to see after you buy the breakout. That's very tricky. And people may have banged it out, stopped out, and then it turns into a bullish pin bar and pushes to the high. So that's tricky. That's something you may have to face, right? But theoretically, this breakout should have just done this. Should have just went straight ahead, not this bearish candle first. That's going to be tricky. So you have to be prepared for that. You may bang it out here and then have to get back in. Or just take the loss and be like, forget it. I'm just not going to get involved because, you may get caught at the top again. It's tricky. But that's a nice example. And it broke out and then it gave it back eventually anyway. But you may get something like this. Okay, you may get something like that, and that's like a double fake out. It faked out one way and then faked out again. That's why I don't like breakouts. I don't like swing trade breakouts. I'd rather, if I'm going to play with it, I'd rather do it on small time frames, like 5 minute, 15 minute, whatever, because you can take little bits and pieces out, during this situation, and then perhaps find a nice buy level somewhere in here somewhere, and just take bits and pieces. I'd rather do that than try to go for this whole move. That's just me, though. That's a personal preference. Okay, thank you. A short at the top of the range is pretty nice. Risk reward. Okay, so that's a good question too. You bring up a short at the top. So yes, the reward risk would make sense. Just understand that you deal with a lower probability. And I would recommend or suggest that for more experienced traders. Like if you have the confidence and the experience to do it and you see the setup, and also I would suggest smaller time frames for that as well, because you're going against a pretty big picture here and probability favors the breakout. So as long as you're able to recognize that you're wrong pretty quickly, or make sure that you're using a hard stop somewhere, because if you don't want to get caught in that, because if this thing breaks out 113 to possibly 120, it could go there quickly. We just, there's no way to know. So you just have to be prepared for what can go wrong. That's all. If you want to go for the short, I mean, look back here, there was a nice shorting situation, a couple of shorting situations, especially on the smaller time frames, right? So you better believe you're likely to see a setup. If you're going to do it, there's two places. Obviously over here, this area right here, because that's going to be the failed high relative to this high right here, right? It's going to be the failed high. And then up in this area, right? You want to, when you're dealing with a bullish trend, you want to look at the failed highs, not the double tops. The failed highs is because that's where if it's going to fake out, all the buyers pile in, and that's where they all get stuck. So that's your greatest probability that if it's going to reverse or fake out, it's the probability is greater there, or at least the potential is greater there in that sense, right? Because everyone's piled in, it doesn't work, and they all have to bang it out, and you're in from a good price. So that's how I like to treat that. If I do that, usually it's on small time frames, and I've done okay with that. But when it doesn't work, man, it's kind of a waste, you know. So it just depends on if you're in the mood for it. If there is follow through, I'm feeling it'll be pretty easy flip long. So okay, yeah. So as long as you're prepared for what can go wrong, that's the main thing. And like I said, I think you've been around a little while, so you probably have enough confidence or experience to do that. I would not recommend that for someone that's new, because they don't know what wrong looks like, and they're not prepared for it going wrong, and it can go wrong very quickly. So that's why you just need to be prepared for that. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, on small time frames. On this time frame, I wouldn't. I just, that's me personally. I don't short it for swing trades or anything larger than that, because Bitcoin is just, I just don't like fighting it, because when it gets stupid, it gets really stupid really fast, and I'd rather avoid the stress altogether. But on small time frames, no problem. All right, so that's Bitcoin. And so it is consolidating. And the levels I would be watching for this week, if this follows through 113K, if that's cleared, and if that's cleared effortlessly, we're looking at 120. That's the next area, 120. And it's hard to believe, but it can happen. And if it happens, you better believe everyone's going to be going nuts. You're going to see all the morons on YouTube and all that. You know how that goes, right? Don't get interested at those prices. If you're in, great. Great place to unload. Take money off the table, as I always tell people. If you're not in, nothing to do. Or day trade. You can always day trade. That's always a possibility. No matter what level we're at, you can always day trade. There's always some sort of opportunity somewhere, whether it's long or short, on the small time frames. But if you're not experienced enough, you know, being a day trader is not easier. That's for sure. It's not easier. All right. So that's Bitcoin. Any questions about that? Anyone confused about what I'm saying? I mean, do you find this information helpful, or no? Let me know. Let me know. A A's been talking to me here. Obviously, I think A is thinks it's helpful. Anyone else? So just one more thing I want to add to this. If we get the breakout and this thing runs and we're starting to push up in here, we get something like that, keep in mind that see these wave fives over here with the question marks? See those? Those I'm going to move them, and I'm going to move them over here. That's what happens with wave counts. You have to adjust. They're never certain. So the thing is though, every time I suspect a wave five, if I can count five waves, it doesn't mean that it's the fifth. It doesn't mean that it's like the big wave five, but we get corrective moves, right? It's a high probability that we get a corrective move. Now, this corrective move wasn't a very big one, and now it's consolidating, which leads me to believe that it's just a triangle, meaning it's a wave four. So if that's the case, and we get to like 120 or whatever, maybe we go further. I don't know. But when that fifth wave completes, you do not want to be long this thing. That's all I'm saying, because as the fifth wave develops, the risk elevates and the chances continue to increase that a broader corrective wave is next. We haven't seen the broader corrective wave. This is not a broader corrective wave. This is just a consolidation, and it's still within proportion of this impulse. It's still in proportion. It's still part of this impulse. It's still within proportion. So that's likely a wave four. And once we see that fifth wave, and that fifth wave, you can count five waves in it. All I can say is that's not a place to be thinking it's getting started. Okay. Hey, Peter. Thank you. Oh, cool. Oh, cool. All right, cool. So you guys understand that? How much should I sell percentage wise if price reaches 120? Okay, well, that's a good question. That's going to depend on how much you're willing to, how much money you want to take off the table. That's really like a personal question. It's going to depend on your risk tolerance as well. How much are you willing to give back? If it was my position, and I know that this is a fifth wave, I personally would probably sell more than 50%. Maybe keep some on just in case it extends, right? But I would sell a decent portion of it, because again, we don't know where the top is going to be. I don't know if 120 is going to be the top. 130 may be the top. 150, I don't know. This thing goes nuts, right? So I would sell a decent portion. Maybe if you don't want to let a whole bunch of it go, at least 30%, something like that. I would, for myself, something like that, between 30 and 50%. And then at that point, I would be looking for confirmations of selling activity. Like one thing you could do, if you'd really rather not sell any, one thing you could do is let it give you a reason to sell. Like 120, we get a massive pin bar. Okay. Massive pin bar develops on the weekly. Okay. Most likely it won't be at 120 anymore if you see a massive pin bar. But you know what I'm saying? Like you get some kind of sell signal on a large time frame. That's a signal to be like, all right, now I'm going to unload a good portion of it. So maybe, like, for example, you put a limit order in at 120 for like maybe 10 or 15% of your position. Something like, so if it taps up there, you're locking in some great profit, right? Something like that. And then maybe it continues. And then you hold on to the bulk of your position until you start to see selling confirmations. Like, for example, I would have probably done something like that up here. Just seeing some kind of selling confirmation, get out of some of it, not the whole thing, right? You don't want to think in absolutes, because again, we don't know how far it can extend. Does that make sense? So, so also, and maybe what you can do is you just portion it out, right? So, but portion it out instead of just using a limit order, a blind limit order, because what if it blows through 120? What if it goes straight to 125, right? You want to be in on that. If there is no reason to sell, then you probably shouldn't sell. But if it gives you, if a reason appears, that's when you want to take note, and that's when you want to start making adjustments. Another thing you can do is you can just trail a stop. Maybe you put a sell stop somewhere nearby. So, you see a sell signal develop at 120, you're like, all right, I'll put a sell stop maybe at 118 or whatever, 118.5. And if it goes there, I'm out of a good portion of it. You give some money back, but at least you gave it a chance to continue, right? So you have to figure that part out yourself. I can't tell you exactly how to do that, but I can at least offer you some ideas, some things to think about. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so that's Bitcoin. Now let's move along here and let's take a look at some other markets. Are there any markets you guys want to see? Let's take a quick look. Let's just scan through some of the ones I like to look at. So we could start with, cool, no problem. Let's take a, I mean, that's what I do this stream for. You know, I want to provide value. I want to provide ideas, perspective, things to think about. Because again, we're all in the same boat. I don't know the future. None of us do. This is a random game. So you just have to be prepared for scenarios and certain things that the market can show you. If the market shows you these certain things, then at least you say, okay, I recognize that and I can adjust my risk. It always goes back to adjusting your risk. That's it. And if you do that properly, you'll come out ahead more often than not. You're still going to lose sometimes, but you should be coming out ahead if you're keeping your risk and your size under control and in proportion. Okay. XRP. Okay. So, all right, so cool, A. Thanks for requesting that. Let me do real quick. Let's just take a quick look at some markets. We'll take a look at I want to take a look at like oil, right? Gold. So real quick, let's take a look at Nasdaq first. Um, we could look at the futures, NQ1, right? We could start with that one first because I mean, look, this thing is just it's kind of ridiculous, right? It's just relentless. Where are we at right now? 22,170. Oh man. Right? This thing is just relentless. I mean, this is the daily time frame we're looking at here. All right? This is a daily time frame. And one thing you have to realize, yes, this has to do with inflation. As our dollar loses its value, things like the Nasdaq and the S&P and stocks, they're just going to go higher. It's not that they're not going higher because they're doing well. They're going higher because our dollar is losing its value. That's why they're going higher. Look at this. So we have to pay attention to that, right? Yeah, we have to pay attention to that. So again, this has to do with like geopolitical stuff, whatever. But understand that people may be looking at this and saying, I don't understand. We have a deficit situation. We have inflation. We have all kinds of problems. Everywhere you look, there's problems. Okay. Problems here. People are demonstrating for ridiculous reasons. I mean, it's just problems everywhere. And the NASDAQ is here. So you have to consider that and be like, why? It's confusing, right? Shouldn't the NASDAQ be selling off? Oh, it's because our dollar is losing its value. So that's an effect of inflation, and we have to deal with that. But understand that the level's still relevant here. The level is still relevant. What this means to me is that this is a bad place to invest. I would not touch anything. Notice I've been very quiet about the Qs, right? I'm not touching anything. I'm not touching SPYs. I'm not touching Qs. I'm not doing anything because these levels are horrendous. I'm not going near the risk is just, I see elevated risk. We don't pull back. This market does not pull back. So eventually, though, it will. And when it pulls back, that's when I'll be watching. But there's nothing to do here. Now, day trade is another story. I mean, you saw the trade we had earlier today, a nice long day trade. It was beautiful. Great. I have no problem doing that. But swing trades or investing, forget it. No way. Not at these levels. So that's the NASDAQ, right? That's the one thing I have to say about that. Let me know if you have questions. Now, let's take a quick look at something like oil. Oil got nicely beat up. Let's see, US, we can go to CL1. Okay. This is the futures contract. Obviously, oil is going to be sensitive to geopolitical stuff. And oil had this gap or whatever overnight, whatever, right? And it's just been going into the toilet ever since. Right now it's at 71.30. It's been as low as 69.30. This is a massive move for oil. So again, if you're interested in buying something like this, and look, there's a nice impulse here. Look at the impulse structure. Look at this. One, this is wave two, perfect wave two. Look at this, wave three. That is a ideal wave three. Wave threes typically look like this. Just a massive move. Typically they look like that. And now we're clearly into a wave four, just beginning. So wave four, realize that wave four can go all the way to the top of wave one. Wave 4 can go here and still be a bullish impulse. That's understand that. That's an important rule for impulse waves. So there's a lot of room for this thing to pull back. Meaning, if you're thinking about long oil, it's a little early. There's a lot of room, right? And day trade oil, I don't know. I don't day trade oil, but I'm sure there's some movement in there. Okay. But as far as swing trades go, there's nothing there right now because you got a lot of room to pull back. All right. That's oil. Let me know if you have questions. Now, oil, by the way, oil is also a measure. It's the energy sector. And they use that also as a measure of inflation. So high oil prices obviously are bad news for inflation. So pulling back here now, oil has obviously risen significantly, but theoretically it should pull back at least to the somewhere near the wave one area. Maybe not that low, maybe not as low as 63, but a good place a lot of times if you do like retracements is like the 30, 38, the 382, somewhere around there. So that would probably equate to somewhere around this area, right? Just a little bit lower. Maybe what is that? What's this low over here? 68.49. So just actually where it bounced off of. So 68s, 67s, this would be a good support area for oil. If it can hold that, then you'd be looking for a wave 5 for a swing trade anyway. You could play oil with options. There's a number of ways you could play oil. You don't have to do, you could do CFDs. So if NQ hits highs and impulses, what range would you target? Okay, good question. As far as the NQ, I can go back to that real quick. So, well, if NQ breaks out, first of all, I don't know. I think the probability is low because this is a pretty significant area, right? So I'm anticipating the reversal around here somewhere. It doesn't mean I'm not shorting this thing as a swing trade or anything like that. One nice way to play this would be with options, but again, there's no sell signal. There's just nothing there. And like something like this with this pin bar, I don't have any positions on, but something like that would have prompted me for like option spreads. And look, that wouldn't be working right now. That would be a losing trade. So we need to break some supports, first of all, to prove that. But if it's going to keep going, if it's going to keep going, we're going to have to look at the weekly time frame. Oh, look, there's a signal. Look, the Trade Scanner Pro can answer your question. There's a signal on the Trade Scanner Pro, and the objective is up here. Let's see, where is that? That's some ridiculous number, 23,200. That's what the Trade Scanner Pro is saying. If this thing breaks out and goes beyond this area right here, 23,000 is the price objective, right? And that's based on candle ranges. So that's pretty interesting, right? So that's one area. And for me, since I'm usually more conservative, I would just cut that in half. What's the halfway point? 20, so 22, like 22.7, 22.6, around there, just cutting that in half. I would say it's a higher probability if we break out. So there you go. All right, that's the NQ. 23,200. Yeah. So yeah, that's some numbers to consider. Another thing you could do is you could do extensions, right? You could do like extensions and do something like this. This will kind of give you an idea too. Do something like this. Let's see where we're at. Look, we're almost at. Look at that. We're at the 1618. We're just there. Look at that. So the 2618 would be next, or somewhere the halfway point in between there. So that would, well, the halfway point, that's kind of ridiculous. The 2618 is at 25,234. The halfway point is around here somewhere, 23,679, right? So again, it kind of lines up a bit. You see that? Anyway, all right. So just some numbers to think about. Remember, I know you know this, but someone that may be tuning in, those are not price forecasts. Those are just possible inflection points that if the market gets there, that would be a good place to take money off the table if it can get there. All right, no problem. All right, so let's take a quick look at the bond market because the bond market is like where the game begins. These are the 10-year note futures. Got to pay close attention to this, especially since a lot of morons on TikTok and on Twitter, everyone makes a big deal, and they have all this drama and all these renowned economists and blah blah blah. Yet there's nothing happening here. It takes the while for the bonds to do something significant. Now I understand maybe they're projecting this and that and saying, well, if the bonds do this, okay, great, I get it. But the bonds haven't done anything yet. Look, we're still inside this consolidation. So for us to see drama, for us to see some real problems, bond prices, which are inverse to the yields, bond prices need to go here. Right? That's where bond prices need to go. If bond prices go there, that means yields are making new highs. And if yields are making new highs, that means you can't borrow money, right? And banks are going to have problems because they're long these bonds and they're going to become insolvent. They're going to have bank runs. That's what happens if the bonds start pushing their lows. We're nowhere near the lows. We've been in a way worse situation here than we are now. So, and if bonds continue to rise, bond prices rise, if they do that, that means yields should be going lower, right? People want to see that. US 10Y. This is the inverse. Bond yields. Oh, look, there's a signal on the bond yields. Let's see what the signal says. Remember, with the Trade Scanner Pro, the signal doesn't mean anything. It has to align with your analysis, right? It's a confirmation tool. So, I mean, I know the general structure has been bullish on the yields. So, a long signal would make sense on the Trade Scanner Pro, and it's calling for a long. Look at that. It just basically called the trade on the previous candle. I guess that's Friday's candle, and it's calling for what is that, a higher high? No, it's not. It's almost a higher high. It's calling for a test of the high. But again, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean there's any kind of increased probability. The Trade Scanner Pro is only confirming your idea and defining the risk and giving you a profit objective. That's all it's doing, right? Based on momentum. So looks like yields though are poised to go higher. And look, you got a failed low, higher low situation right here. So this breakout, you could draw a trend line over here, connect these two highs, breaks above that, yields look like they're poised to go higher. Now, maybe the FOMC changes that on Wednesday. Maybe Powell says something that signals that maybe they're going to cut rates soon or blah blah blah, right? If they cut rates soon, they're cutting the short-term rate. It usually affects the longer-term rates, and then this should go the other way. And bond prices should go higher. If he says, okay, next time we'll cut, whatever. But he doesn't want to cut. And there are a lot of good reasons. It's not like that he's being tough to deal with. It's he understands that we have an inflationary situation and cutting rates, this is like not the time to cut rates. So usually you want to do that in a slow economy when when inflation is not a problem, and that's usually when you cut rates to stimulate things. What are we stimulating here? So I don't know. I have to agree with him. I think he's trying to do the right thing. Anyway, that's what the yields look like. So if this spikes and we start working way toward our highs, watch out with the banks. That's all I can say. Watch out for the banks. You can see a lot of drama. All right. So that's the bond yields. All right. Let's move along here. All right. So let's take a look at XRP. If anyone else has a request for a symbol, just put it in the chat. So we'll take a look at XRP over here. Let's see, what is XRP showing us? So there's a signal there. So like I said, let's see if the signal makes sense with our analysis. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to start with the weekly time frame to get a sense of perspective. This is what you do for swing trades. It's the same process that we do for day trades, same exact process. I'm just using larger time frames. So I'm looking at levels here, support and resistance, right? This is a support over here. How about inside here? Do we have anything? Yeah, sort of. Yeah, we have a common level right there. Then we have some resistances here, right? All right, I don't have to draw them all the way up here because they're not even relevant. They're not even in play. So we have some levels. I see here, generally, look, XRP is clearly a bullish structure. right? This was the election over here. Since then, we've had a higher low consolidation. In fact, you can even see there's an impulse wave here. Look, this is wave one back here, right? Wave two, typically consolidation. Wave three, which is typically a massive move like this. Wave four, which is this whole thing over here, consolidation. And it looks like there's room for a wave five here, right? So the signal from the Trade Scanner Pro is in line with that. Let's go back to the daily time frame and let's see what the signal is telling us as far as risk. So now this signal, by the way, has been present for quite some time. Since June, what is that? June 2nd. Since June 2nd, this signal has been present. So you've had numerous opportunities to get involved in this, even on the daily time frame, which, you don't get, usually you're not going to see a lot of opportunities on you need to go to a smaller time frame. So look, the signal appeared, right? On this candle right here. It pulled back, never went to the stop. This is ideal for the filter that I'm talking about. Not only that, there was a support there. That's the blue line. The support could have been generated from back here. Common levels, common levels. So you had some idea of that, right? Never went to the stop, and then you get an inside bar. That is an ideal entry. You're inside the risk gap. You're getting a reversal inside the risk gap. It never touched the stop. So at that point, your risk, you're using the stop as your risk is minimized here. 12, we could round that to 13 cents. It's like 12.7. We can round that 13 cents of risk. Okay? That's pretty good considering that the actual risk is 21 cents. So you're saving yourself, what is that, like 1/3 of the risk, basically? Nice. And since then, look, it's gone up decently, only to pull back to where you bought it. And again, inside bar. Look at that. Pin bar, inside bar. And look where it is now. Also, again, you could have used the reentry prices at the blue line. Of course, you're taking the full risk there. But you see that? So there were, let's count. There was, after the signal, which we're using as a heads up, there was 1, 2, 3, right? 4 entry opportunities. 4 on a daily time frame. So basically like over like a 2 or 3 week period, there were 4 entry opportunities. Now forget it. You can't touch this thing now. Now you're taking the most risk. So this is a beautiful setup, and look at your profit objective. So if you're in, let's just say you bought it at the blue line because you weren't paying attention to the candlesticks, right? You bought it at the blue line, you took the risk. Now you're looking at 31 cent, a 31-cent profit objective, which is 1.5 to 1 relative to your risk. But that's a nice setup. It aligns with the bigger picture. I mean, there's nothing, if you're in, there's nothing to do but let it ride, right? I wouldn't even suggest an early exit here. I would just give this thing a chance. Okay, if you want to be really aggressive, you add on this breakout. It's breaking out now. I guess it's broken out. You add, but that's being really aggressive. Because look, you could have done that here. You could have put on more like right at this breakout, and you would have taken a bunch of pain on that. So anyway, nice. XRP is doing nice, I have to say. I don't follow that one in terms of news and stuff, but it's looking good there. Nice candle. All right, so thanks for asking about that one. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Let's take a look at gold, because gold has been in play. XAU, USD, gold and silver have been in play. Now again, gold has been like, particularly today. Let's see, where is it? 33.84. I mean, this is on the daily time frame. Look at where gold is having a hard time. So this is what I mean about, this is a good example of a fake out, buying the breakout and then seeing this. Because look, at one point, gold was broken out, right? Look, At one point, you could have said, okay, look, breakout right here, breakout. And the next candle you get is this. that. That is not what you want to see after you take a breakout. That's just not what you want to see, especially at this resistance area like this. So, I mean, look at this situation here, right? Massive pin bar. Now, eventually gold came back, but the problem with this is you go, oh, it'll come back. We're printing money like crazy. It'll come back. Hopefully, but why take that risk? Why not let everyone else take the risk, identify some support levels, and look to get long? If you're going to get long, wait for some supports. Look, there's plenty of supports. Plenty. Look, can I draw a line here? Yeah, look. Right? Those are your support levels for gold. Why not wait to see if you can get a retest of one of those at least? At least you're not buying the top. Right? Make sense? I mean, look at this. Gold, and this may just be a consolidation after pushing those highs. It may consolidate up in here and eventually break higher. And at the rate we're doing things in this country, fundamentally that makes sense. But, something may change. Something may change that bolsters the dollar. Something can change. Maybe they revalue gold, right? They were talking about revaluing gold at one point. And because gold on the government balance sheets is at $42 or $42.70, something weird like that. Gold is not $3,400 on the balance sheet. So I don't know, that can have an effect on gold. Anyway, so but that's just talk. And that would be a lot of effort. It's like the Senate has to be involved in that and whatever. So that's just talk. Anyway, so that's what I mean. So, hey, that's what I mean. Like if you buy Bitcoin, whatever, on the breakout and you see this, that's a heads up right there that you're probably caught in a fake out. So, one thing you could do, like for example, in a breakout, you don't have to go all in. You realize you don't have to take your full size on this breakout. You can take a small bite. And if it continues, you add. But if it does this, you're like, all right, I'll bang it out. And you bang out your little position and you take a small loss. That's one thing to consider. Just realize though, as you add, the fake out may come soon. It may come up as well. So you have to be very flexible with that. But that gives you a lot more leeway compared to going all in. Like I would never go all in on a breakout. Usually you want to be in before the breakout and use the breakout as an opportunity to add. That's especially true on very small time frame strategies, like the kind of day trades that I take. Okay. ADA. Sure, let's take a look. No problem, Hussein. Let's take a look. ADA USD Cardano. So, I mean, it looks like these altcoins are starting to perk up a bit, right? Are we in altcoin season? I think we still have a ways to go before altcoin season is here. But hey, you never know. I've been wrong about altcoin season before because I use the bonds as my gauge. That's why. And we had an altcoin season where the bonds completely failed to signal. They failed to give me the right perspective. Anyway, let's take a look at the weekly time frame. So here's Cardano on the weekly. So it looks very similar to XRP in a sense. We had this initial move right here. That's the election. And since then, we've just been in this consolidation, right? That's what this is. And it's pretty nasty. We can say, do we have an impulse here? Let's see. If wave one, this would be your wave one, and wave four overlap. Yeah, so this is not an impulse. Where in XRP, we have what looks to be an impulse wave. Cardano, this should not overlap. This should not overlap this. If it overlaps, it's not an impulse. So that means we could treat this as more of like a consolidation. Now understand that if there is some sort of altcoin season, this thing will probably rally regardless, right? So the only value I believe we can get from technical analysis with these altcoins is really just the levels. Really, the levels can give you a heads up as to what to anticipate next, right? You have a support right there. What is that? That's the 56 cent area. You could round that to 50 cents. What's this over here? 50 cents. Yeah, the tails on those candles are at 50 cents. A nice whole number. So you can use that as a gauge. This thing breaks below 50 cents. You probably just want to not add to it, wait until it stabilizes, and just hold on to what you got. I wouldn't bang it out. I mean, these type of things, you just hold on to them. Either they go to zero or they make you rich. I mean, they're very binary like that, right? So, but that's up to you, of course. If this thing can produce the higher low, like it's trying to do right now, I mean, you still have the whole week, then that may give you an opportunity to add if you get the higher low. But ideally, what you want to see is this break here. If you get that break, which is, what is that? 84 cents. So this thing starts pushing 85 cents in the next few weeks, then you're in good shape. That would be a breakout, especially if it comes from a higher low. And that theoretically could be a wave 3, a mini wave 3. If this little section over here is a wave 1, right? And this pullback is a wave 2, possibly, but you don't know until wave 3 is in play, right? And it could look something like that. Then followed by your wave 4 pullback for a fifth wave, right? It's possible you get something like that. But of course, you need the appropriate catalyst. There has to be something behind that. It's not going to just do it randomly. The problem with these altcoins is they're too liquid. There's too much. The whole world is in them. So for them to move, there has to be something very significant happening to get a move like that. So it may take a lot longer. It'd be nicer, of course, if it was in a couple of weeks, but you need a significant catalyst. Like, look, the election, that was a pretty significant catalyst. Got this thing moving, right? Presidential election. So something like along those lines. Make sense? So yeah, no, there's no signal here. Nothing yet. What you want to see, Hussein, is what would breaking the lower high would be a great sign for you. If it breaks that, that may even be an opportunity to add if you're aggressive. That may be an opportunity to do that if it breaks above there. This could turn into something if you get the inside bar, but you have a whole week. It's got to close and then break above this candle. You have to see how this candle finishes, how it closes. We can take a look at this is the weekly. Let's look around and see if are there any signals on the Trade Scanner Pro. You have a double bottom here on the daily. All right. Let's go to the 4 hour. Anything? I don't see no signals here. Let's go to the 1 hour. Anything? Oh, you got the 1 hour is giving you a short. But again, the Trade Scanner Pro doesn't tell you anything about the future. So this short is not in line with the bigger picture. So I wouldn't worry about this. This is a situation where you ignore it simply because it's not in line. So how is it not in line? Well, when we look at the weekly time frame, we just finished talking about bullish setup. The reason why it's calling a short is because the Trade Scanner Pro is focusing on this movement right here. So if you were looking for a day trade or something like that, okay, fine, you could go for a short. But bigger picture for investing or whatever, which I would imagine that's what you're doing, I would ignore that signal. So yeah, I would ignore that because it's not relevant to this time frame. And this time frame is showing nothing but supports and stuff like that, and it's a broader higher low and all that. Plus, Bitcoin is surging, and if Bitcoin breaks out, that could be a positive for these things. Just keep in mind if Bitcoin fails, these things are acting relatively weak. You have to keep that in mind. Okay, Bitcoin is the leader, and these things should be following closely, and none of them do, which means money is not going into these. But sometimes the cycle is strange. Bitcoin leads, and then it pulls back, and then all that money goes into these, right? There's no way to know. Excuse me. There's no way to know how that's going to play out. You just have to follow whatever you're in and pay attention to the levels. If it goes against you at certain levels, like breaks 50K, 50 point, $50, then, or 50 cents, I mean, you step aside. Don't do anything. Just hold on to what you got, or if you want to unload some just to reduce your risk, that's up to you. But it's certainly not a time to add until it shows stability again. What's stability? Well, it does something like this, consolidates, gives you failed lows, higher lows, stops making new lows, That's stability. All right, makes sense? Okay, no problem. That's Cardano. Let me see. Let me just check the chat here. Anything else? Let me just check. I've been pretty good at my ums, huh? I've been really trying not to say I don't see any other. I don't see any other requests in the chat. So I think I covered all the main ones I wanted to cover. How about, let's see, we got the NASDAQ. That's basically the same as the S&P. We looked at the bonds, we looked at gold, we looked at oil, we looked at Bitcoin, a couple of these altcoins in here. I think we pretty much got them all. I mean, we could take a quick look at silver, XAGUSD, because silver's gotten some headlines recently. I mean, silver, look, another example of a breakout. Now, hey, here's an example of a breakout that just followed through, right? This is the weekly. Let's go to the daily. This thing broke out. I mean, look at this breakout here. Broke out. See this? Broke out of this consolidation. Can I get a line here? There we go. Broke out and it closed strong. Look at this. Strong close, right? Strong. Yeah, it hesitated a bit, but this isn't bad. This right here is not bad, especially if it stays inside the range of that breakout candle. Those are inside bars. That's exactly what you want to see after a breakout because that's a continuation pattern, right? And they're pin bars. But never mind the pin bar part. The fact that they're inside bars is really the main thing. And look, you broke above and continued. That's follow through. Look up here, same story, same thing is trying to happen up here, right? So again, if you took this breakout over here, what price is this? 34.81, and it just followed through, closed strong. Now you compare that to that gold candle, and you see what I mean? So you have something to compare visually. Now look at this breakout over here. Look at this breakout over here, right? Breakout, and then, yeah, you get the inside bar, but then look what's happening. Okay, it's trying to hold, but you shouldn't see this. You shouldn't, like, two candles are one thing, right? Two candles for a continuation pattern are one thing. If you get the third candle, like, okay, I'm waiting for it to continue, and it breaks the lows of those candles, it shouldn't do that. That's not that's not the follow through you're looking for. You need to see the highs of those candles getting broken, not the lows. Right? So again, just to kind of give you signs of what a failed breakout can look like. There's many variations of it. Hyperliquid, what's the symbol? I don't know the symbol. Can you give me the symbol? I could probably type it in here. Hyperliquid. Oh, oh, that's a coin. They're an exchange, aren't they? I guess that's their coin. We can look at the Hyperliquid against Hype USD. We can take a look at that. Hyperliquid. Wow, they're doing pretty well. Man, let's look at the weekly chart. These guys, these exchanges, they come out with their native coins, and these guys get extremely rich. These people that are all involved with the exchange, because they all have their coin, the native coin. Look at that. That's a beautiful looking chart. Anyone want to open an exchange and do a native coin? Yeah, look at this. Look at the wave count. There's not a lot of data here, but the wave count is pretty clear. This is wave one, right? Wave two pullback, which can correct 100% of wave one, which is exactly what happened here. It corrected 100% and is still bullish. Bitcoin can do this, okay? That's when wave two goes 100%. It can do it. Wave two, followed by unexpected wave three. And inside of wave three, look, this is like a little mini wave two. This is a little mini wave four. So wave three, there's 5 waves in it. Wave three. So I would be looking out for the broader wave four. Okay, the broader wave four. Now, that's going to be tricky because if this is the top of wave one, that's going to be tricky. Can we really count that tail as a top of wave one? Because if it overlaps into it, it's gonna kind of make the wave count conflicted. So 48 to 52. So in a situation like that, right? 48 to 52. One thing you can do, if you could, this is where the extension tool can be useful. And you do this, right? You can measure, we don't have to measure the full top there. Do something like this, and this will give you an idea. So 5148 is the 618. So yeah, 5148 would be a good place. So you said 48 to 52. So yeah, that's proportional. That's proportional as a place to as a profit objective. I wouldn't step in front of that short unless of course you get like a clear-cut signal and you're aggressive and you're willing to take the risk. But man, tell you the way to get rich, open an exchange and start your own native coin. You will be rich. Speaking of that, reminds me, not buy, Whitebit sent me a message today. Do you know that Whitebit was the exchange that they were the sponsors, or they were operating the ICTC. It was their event. They partnered today with Juventus, which apparently is a soccer team for Italy. I'm not really, I don't know much about soccer teams, but it's a big deal. Their native coin went up like $10 on that news. Imagine that. Imagine how much richer those guys are getting. And I don't have any. They don't give me no native coins. It would have been, maybe they could have paid me in some white Bitcoin. I would have been happy with that. So this coin has been way too strong to short. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, this is a strong chart. So either you day trade this thing on the long side, but I don't even know if these things day trade. What I never look at these things. Let's take a look at like a 15-minute time frame. What does this look like on a 15-minute time frame? Well, there's a long signal in it. Man, look at that. Nice breakout there. How's this long signal? How's it done? Let's see. The long signal was back here. Remember, this is a 15-minute chart. So, like I said, you don't take the initial signal. Use it as a heads up. There was an entry possibility here. There was one over here. That one would have worked out nice. Almost went to the profit objective. One over here. This one you're taking some pain on. Another one over here. Another one right now. All right, if it goes back above that green candle on a 15-minute. So that's how you can use something like that. It doesn't guarantee it's going to work, but at least you're not buying and it goes straight to the stop. And you don't have to, at this point, you don't have to use the full stop here. You could just use this low right here as your exit. If it's not working, you take a small bite, blow it out. If it doesn't work, if it continues, you add. That's what I had done that in my stream earlier today. I started out with one contract, not two. And as it continued, I put on a second contract. So, okay, just waiting for a decision on hype. Decision? Oh, what do you mean decision? I know SRM went and the announcement of Tron Treasury or something. Okay, okay, yeah. So, oh, you know that you know that team? Yeah, apparently that team is from Italy, I guess. Juventus? I don't know. I've never heard of them. But again, I only know American football, and I don't even know that well enough. But yeah. So anyway, but the point is, it spiked their coin. Let's see. Can we see the white Bitcoin? Let's see. Can we see it? Why? I don't know what the I don't know what the symbol is. White rock, white white stone. What is that? White stone bit? No, that's not it. No, those are stocks. White sugar, white rock, white rock tether. I think it's WBT. I think is their native coin. I don't see anything here. WBT. Nano, Weebit, Whitebit coin, WBT USD. I guess that's it right there. White Bitcoin. Yeah, I think this is it. WBT. Let's. Oh man, is this right? That's a 15 minute. Is this right? Someone got rich. Let's take a look here. Man, they could have told me about this in advance or something. Let's see, is this it? I think yeah, 52. Yeah. Okay, look at that. That's on that news. Now I would imagine someone knew about that news in advance, but who would know that it would spike this like this? Look at this on the line aligning up with a soccer team. They're going to be partners with Faventus, whatever. They're going to be like I guess their skin or something like that for their upcoming season. Obviously, it's a very big deal. So yeah, Hussein, if someone had told me, I would have told you. But they contacted me today after the move, and they said, "Oh, can you let people know that we've had this partnership?" I'm all right, sure. I'll let you know. Would have been nice if I knew in advance, though. Man, someone's rich today. Look at that. Anyway, that's how you make money. This is how you get rich with altcoins. You have some kind of start an exchange, have a native coin, and then do this. That's how they do it, or something like that, or start a meme coin or something. I don't know. Uh, telling you, man. So yeah, but so they have this partnership. I have to. I'm gonna put it on my on my Twitter and stuff. You know, because they were generally they're. I'll tell you, as an exchange. I mean, and as far as the way their employees work, man, they work hard. They're sharp people. I have to give them that. Like no one's perfect, but you know, I've had a positive experience with them. Anyway, but they could have told me about this. It would have been nice. Again, I wouldn't have known with a partnership with a soccer team. I don't know. That just doesn't strike me as something as making a move like this. How much? What is that? A 30% move? It's pretty wild. What are your thoughts on the most evil coin, Ethereum? You know, we could take a quick look at it. How much time I have? I start talking too much and then I lose track. You know how that goes. Ethereum. So Ethereum should, I think, just honestly, should be doing better than it's doing. We take a look at a weekly chart because Ethereum, like with Bitcoin doing what it's doing, like Ethereum is supposed to be the follower of Bitcoin. Same with Litecoin. Like these are the main names, right? Ethereum is like number two. You know, Ethereum is like silver to gold. It should be closer. I think it should be doing better than it's doing. But I mean, Ethereum is strange. It has its spurts. I don't understand why Ethereum is not doing better than it's doing, but I just think it's acting relatively weak, like many of the other altcoins. And I think if Bitcoin fakes out, or when Bitcoin has its broader corrective move, this thing is in trouble. That's what I think. But that's based on the relative strength of this relative relationship. I could be wrong. Maybe Ethereum shines when that happens. I don't know. But this is relatively weak. I mean, look where we are. Bitcoin's on its all-time highs practically, and this thing can't even get out of its own way. That's not good. Is there? Let's see. Is Trade Scanner Pro say anything about it? Let's see. Any signals? 4 hour? Anything? Look, Look. There's a long on the 4 hour time frame. A long. Which, if you're going to use Bitcoin as your guide, okay. In fact, it probably called the long the same time that it called the long on Bitcoin. Look at this, high or low. Look at these. Look at these. Look at these candles to enter. Look at the re-entry over here. Plenty of opportunities to get into something like that, at least for a swing trade. Now the party's over. Forget it. Now, if you're in, you just hold for the profit objective or move your stop or something because it's right stuck there right in the middle there. So Ethereum just looks so bad, but it's trying right. And look, the profit objective. What's the profit objective based on recent price movement? The profit objective is here, which is what 27.85. So that would be if you're in it, that would be a good place to take something off the table, at least, and then let the trailing stop. Use the trailing stop for the rest of it. But again, I'm not a big believer in these things. I know they have all kinds of potential, and everyone's going to be a trillionaire one day. And I've heard it a million times. I understand, but I don't trust a lot of them. For a short term, if you're invested and you're only looking for like a big push, whatever, a big whatever, and then you take your money, hey, cool, nothing wrong with that. But I just have a hard time with these things as far as long term investments. I just have a hard time. Like I understand all the arguments and everything else. I guess it doesn't hurt to have a portion of your portfolio in some of these things, like at least Bitcoin. But to be all in, I don't know. I just don't see these things as I don't see these things as true investments compared to other things like stocks and things like that. Certain stocks, Google is going to be around most likely in 20 years. You know that for sure, most likely. Hey, things can change. But a stock like Amazon, look at Amazon 20 years ago and look where it is today. So, I mean, you could say, well, look where Bitcoin was 10 years ago. I agree. I remember when Bitcoin was $500 and $600. I remember those days. So, but Bitcoin had some wild rides. And for a lot of that time, Bitcoin was nothing more than a gambling thing and a scam, as most people thought it was. So, anyway, but that's just my opinion. It doesn't mean anything. And I don't think like I know better than anyone else, and I don't think I'm right. It's just I don't feel comfortable risking on something like that. A small amount, yeah, but I'd rather if I was going to invest larger amounts of money, it wouldn't be in this. It would be in something like the Nasdaq or S&P. They just make a lot more sense to me, and but of course not at the current prices, like I explained earlier in the stream. They're just for extraction. Just need to take advantage while we can. Right, right. If that's what you're doing, yeah, no problem. That it's just another opportunity to take advantage of. Nothing wrong with that. So anyway, that's Ethereum. All right. So I think I'm gonna wrap this up now. I've been at this for a while. This is Bitcoin, right? So this is the signal all occurred across the board here, right? That Bitcoin and Ethereum signal were basically the same. So I mean, what does that tell you? Bitcoin leads, Ethereum follows, and as most altcoins should follow. But Bitcoin, of course, is the leader, and it's doing way better than everything else. So I know people like to use that Bitcoin dominance and all that other stuff, but I've never found that to be helpful. That's just me. All right, you guys. So I don't see. Let me see anything else here in the chat. I longed SRM at $5. Okay, well, 90%. All the Sailor copy stocks are just going insane. Right. So hey, at least we got a little piece of it. At least we got a piece of it instead of just saying, I missed it. I had no idea why that's even going on. I'm not even familiar with SRM or whatever. So nice job. You should have told us, man. You should have told us. I'm joking. All right, you guys. So anything else? So all right. So you guys then, just to recap, you guys should be prepared for the week. We have some heavy news, and then we have a holiday right after it, which I think is very inconvenient. Yeah, I'm gonna unfriend. I'm gonna unfriend you, for not telling me. You and Whitebit. I'm gonna unfriend all of you for not telling me. Come on, how are we supposed to make money here? No, I understand. I understand. I'm joking. I'm glad you got a piece of it. I'm glad you got a piece of it. But I'm just curious, like, what prompted you? Were you following some news or something, or was it something technical? I would imagine it was some news. Like, what was where was the source of the information? Because see, I don't. One problem with me is I don't pay attention to news. I don't follow any chat rooms. I don't even look at Twitter. And there's a lot of information. Sometimes you can spot opportunities, or something may pop up, and you may be able to get a piece of something as a result. But I just rather I like to keep things simple. But that's just me. I mean, I see guys on YouTube who make tons of money by just following other people on Twitter and talking about their whatever they put on Twitter. They'll sit there and they'll comment on a video or something. I'm like, man, they talk about some, oh, okay. Ah, interesting. So it came from a group. Okay. Right. So as we know, like a lot of those groups, sometimes something works out great for everyone and sometimes it doesn't. It's basically, it is a gamble, but you got it from a source of news. So that makes sense. Right. So, I mean, that's the thing with those coins. Now imagine an announcement from the Tron Treasury. Okay. Imagine if you were an employee of Tron or something. Or imagine you were someone close to the people at Tron and you knew this in advance. That's who makes money. That's who makes money with altcoins. Imagine if you were one of these close to these developers or whatever in one of these projects and you're like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to announce it, tomorrow. Great. I'm going to buy a ton of it. That's who makes money. Right? Technical, you don't need technical analysis for that. You can throw all the charts out the window. You don't need charts. Inside information is the way to go. But in most instances, it's illegal. But with Tron, I mean, there's none of that regulation with the coins. So imagine that's where people make all the money. That's where people make all the money. Imagine like that white bit thing. Imagine if you knew that announcement was coming in advance. Again, I wouldn't expect a 30% jump, but what if someone said, "Oh, it's probably going to react good to this"? Oh, okay, great. I'll buy some in advance. Hey, you don't know, right? Is is the token? It's okay, right. TRX. Okay, right. So that's what I mean. So if you could get a source like that, you'll make a lot of money. And it has nothing to do with skill. You basically, it's like the Nancy Pelosi method. Right? Ask Nancy Pelosi about charts. Hey Nancy, do you trade on what's a chart? That's what she did. What the hell's a chart? I don't know what that is. So, because everyone dumps it, you get the spike, and the first thing you do, sell it. So then we'll call that the Nancy Pelosi method. If you can get a connection on the inside, you'll be okay. You don't need charts. You don't need to listen to me anymore. Nothing. You could just your inside connection. You'll be okay. So anyway, all right, you guys. All right, enough talk today. I'm talking too much. So guys, again, so we were prepared for the week. Remember on Wednesday, I'll come back. We'll try another NASDAQ trade, see if we can get anything going there. Yeah, me too. If you figure out how to if you make any progress learning that method, please let me know, because I certainly need to be proficient at that method as well. Anyway, you may have to run for Senate or something to do it her way, or just get friendly with get friendly with some developers. Go to the next Bitcoin conference, get friendly with some developers who run one of these coins. I don't know how you would. It's going to depend on your interpersonal skills, I guess. And yeah, and then you'll be all set. And make sure you let me in too. Don't forget about me. All right, guys, I'm just joking. All right, so guys, so we'll try this again Wednesday, 9:30 a.m., and we'll go for the NASDAQ futures. And anyone that's watching on Twitter, do me a favor. You want to try out the Trade Scanner Pro? There's a link. You can see it. Just remember, it's not a forecasting tool, and you need to understand some nuances about it. I go over that during every stream. One of the most important things is that filtering method. If you don't even know that, like, don't even bother. I want to get some videos out there that explain each one of these things about the Trade Scanner Pro, like how to come up with the decision, how to filter it, all that stuff in their own little videos, so that people have like sort of a guide. But I'm just not there yet. All right. Anyway. All right. Cool. Cool. Just don't tell anyone, man. Well, we'll have our own. We'll have our own group. Yeah. 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 Just don't tell anyone. All right, you guys. So enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you so much for watching.